Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Linda Fisk. Linda has LeadHERship Global and has lots of great information for us around female entrepreneurs, challenges. I'm going to expand that out to females in the corporate setting because I find a lot of what she talks about is absolutely appropriate for women in the corporate world. So, with that incredibly long winded introduction, Linda, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's always such a pleasure to be a part of any of your platforms, and you have several. But I tell you, there's not a better, I think, podcast to really lean into and listen and learn from than yours. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Linda, could you start by telling our audience your professional background?
Yeah. So I rose through the ranks on the marketing side of the business. I achieved a position CMO for many of pretty notable media companies like Scripps Networks and Viacom and Belo, a lot of well-known media companies. I ran the marketing department for those media companies. And then I took a hiatus, getting a PhD in clinical psychology, came back into the working world. And this time I was still in marketing, but I decided to go client side. So I began working with some of the most incredible organizations in the world, but in leadership. So I worked as the CMO for a leadership organization called Collective 54, YPO, which led me to the establishment of my current organization, which is LeadHERship Global.
So you're also a podcaster. Tell me about your podcast.
Yeah. So as a podcaster, we have both a podcast and a television show, both with the name LeadHERship Global. And on both the television show and the podcast, the purpose is to help create and support personal and professional breakthroughs. The purpose is really to help guide women to achieving greater leverage, greater freedom in their careers, in their businesses, and in their personal lives. So people are incredibly open, transparent, and really the conversations are very raw and very real about what actions women have taken to be able to craft a life that they feel fulfilled by and rewarded by. So they have crafted a life that is certainly inspirational, incredibly motivational for those of us looking in. But when we get to speak to those women, we understand the steps that they took to create that life and all the trials and tribulations they went through to mold that life, and to work with other women leaders who are setting such incredible examples of being transparent, being open, being honest about the trials and tribulations that led them to making purposeful and intentional decisions about the life they wanted to create. I have found to be just really breakthrough.
Linda, how do you assess the current landscape for female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I would say, Tom, that women in business are a driving force in the US economy. Women-led entrepreneurship, I believe, can create tremendous positive social change. It helps women become financially empowered and independent. And for those women that are head of household, it can absolutely change the trajectory of that family's legacy for generations. According to the US Census Bureau, in fact, women entrepreneurs run about 42% of all American small businesses. Now, keep in mind, that's nearly 13 million businesses that employ nearly 9.4 million people and generate more than literally 1.9, nearly $2 trillion in revenue. In fact, last year, women started nearly 2,000 net new businesses every single day. And about 64% of those new businesses were women-owned businesses with women of color. So think about that. Of the nearly 2,000 new businesses that began last year, 64% of them were started by women of color. And Latino women-owned businesses grew by more than 87% in the past year. So it's important to recognize the impressive growth of women entrepreneurs, right? It's an incredibly impressive, I think, trend that we're seeing where women are beginning to pursue their vision, their dreams, their purpose. But we should also note that women entrepreneurs are not always pursuing an opportunity, but they're often entering into their own entrepreneurial pursuit out of sheer necessity. In fact, the Global Entrepreneur Monitor, the GEM report, suggested that last year, more and more women around the globe have started businesses out of necessity, a much greater percentage compared to men. And fewer women started their companies to pursue an opportunity as compared to men, resulting in a pretty significant gender gap in entrepreneurship. Whereas women feel forced to start an entrepreneurial venture, men often pursue an entrepreneurial journey out of a pursuit of an opportunity. And over the past 5 years, there's been a lot of growth in the number of women who are also operating side gigs, kind of side hustles. And again, often out of sheer necessity. And these sidepreneurs have grown at a rate that is nearly twice as fast as the overall growth in female entrepreneurship. And again, this is often out of necessity. Much of that growth comes from minority women, where sidepreneurship or kind of a side hustle is 2 times higher. That's 65% compared to 32%, respectively. So while the number of women-owned businesses continued to grow, and in fact, between 2015 and 2020, it grew by about 20%. And women of color, the firms owned by women of color actually grew by about 40%, which is amazing. But again, many of these women cite the need for additional income as the sole reason for their sidepreneur hustles.
Linda, I started my professional work life in the 80s, and women were certainly, in my opinion, judged differently than men then. We're now 2025. What, first of all, has anything changed? But two, what are some of the unique challenges you see and you help women with in the workplace?
Yeah. Now, as I said, we're seeing more and more women step into side hustles, sidepreneurship, or embracing entrepreneurship in total. And we're seeing more women of color begin to pursue that opportunity as well, which is amazing. And I think that progress should be recognized and celebrated. But we also need to understand some of the unique challenges that face women entrepreneurs right now. In fact, women in leadership all over. And one of the troubling statistics to take note of is that while nearly 80% of women entrepreneurs in the US feel more empowered now than they did 5 years ago, 66% still report difficulty in obtaining funding that they need to success. In fact, women in the US say that the biggest concern that they have of being able to grow and scale their business is access to capital. So I will say that is an ever-present concern, that women are not receiving the financial support from investors or VCs needed to get their business off the ground. And this is backed by a growing body of research, including a recent Columbia Business School study that found that female-led ventures are 63% less likely to receive any kind of VC funding. And that's in spite of the fact that when women-led ventures do receive funding, they're just as likely to achieve exit outcomes through IPOs or through acquisitions as their male counterparts. And investors report literally nearly $140 billion into startups and small businesses last year. But women-led businesses capture just 3% of those funds. So get that. Women-led businesses captured only 3% of the available funds, and they're on track to fare even worse this year, according to the latest data from the consulting firm PitchBook. Now,
Well,
VC funding is not the only way that you can receive funding for a new startup, right? Additionally, you can pursue loans, you can pursue grants, you can pursue lots of different funding options, but loan approval rates for female entrepreneurs is more than 20% less than it is for men. So again, access to capital is absolutely crucial for any business's growth trajectory. And with so many capable, trustworthy businesswomen in the world, I think it's important, in fact, I'd say vital, for society as a whole to ensure that women get an equal chance to do great things by being able to access loans, or capital through VCs, angel funding. And I will say, we noted the difference between women of color beginning new businesses as compared to other women. And I will tell you, the same is true for minority women entrepreneurs gaining access to capital. The issues are further exacerbated. Black women now own 1.5 million businesses in America that generate about $44 billion per year. But get this, Black women obtain 0.2% of venture capital investment dollars. That's much less than 1%. It's 0.2%. So, with both unintentional and intentional discrimination limiting access that women entrepreneurs have to funding, it's clear that a greater push needs to be made to break down these barriers. And that's really what LeadHERship Global is all about, is breaking down barriers. Investors, lenders, and other financial firms need greater education on the potential of women to improve the business world.
So that really leads into the next area I wanted to explore with you, which is individual women entrepreneurs. What are some of the practical steps women can take to succeed as entrepreneurs, perhaps beyond the funding issue you articulated?
Yeah, I'd say number one is address stereotypes about who entrepreneurs are and what entrepreneurship is. So, support networks for women in startups, women in any kind of entrepreneurial journey. I would say greater representation of women in leadership, girls being taught entrepreneurial skills at a young age. These are critical components of furthering women's success as entrepreneurs. Create support networks for women in startups, create greater representation of women in leadership, in entrepreneurial success stories, and allow girls to be taught entrepreneurial skills at a young age. I think that is a really big step in the right direction that everyone can participate in, addressing stereotypes of who entrepreneurs are and what entrepreneurship is. And number two, I find, and again, this happens in LeadHERship Global every single day, is that we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from each other about the best ways to build successful businesses and vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystems. So, in my mind, every single entrepreneur needs someone to look up to. They need to get guidance at certain times when it comes to decision making. When it comes to approaching investors, they need models, they need success stories. So for women, that often means talking to other female founders and business leaders who have overcome the particular obstacles that they're now facing. So helping female mentors actually carve out time from their schedule is absolutely vital to support founders. But at the same time, I think that female founders, female entrepreneurs need to tap into communities where they can learn from each other, where they can build best practices in building successful businesses, where they have vibrant ecosystems of entrepreneurs and business leaders from every single industry to learn from. And the last thing I would say, Tom, and again, everybody has the opportunity to do this, is change the dialogue about entrepreneurship to match reality. And again, that is one way of overcoming unintentional or intentional discrimination. It starts with being fearless and resilient and fully exploring all the potential options to be seen and to be heard. And being able to recognize the incredible rise of women as entrepreneurs and support them in their pursuits, not say, oh, that won't work. And oh, I give that 2 years. And most startups fail in 5. It's really not about giving them facts and figures about all the reasons they won't be successful. It's really about ensuring that you're overcoming that level of discrimination by helping them, supporting them, guiding them, directing them. And if you're an entrepreneur yourself, it's about being fearless, being resilient, and exploring all the potential options to be seen and heard by potential clients, customers, investors, and partners.
And how does LeadHERship Global do that? And what was your vision around founding it, Linda?
Yeah, I will tell you that As I said, women often thrive in a community of other women that they can learn from, they can grow with, and they can actually emulate, right? So, executive C suite leaders, business owners, business founders, entrepreneurs are constantly bombarded with advice about the importance of growing their network. Build your personal board of directors, use every opportunity to network. It's not what you know, it's who you know. We've all heard those things, and it's all very inspiring, but it's not always intuitive. And for people like me that are very introverted, it can actually be quite intimidating. Now, that said, I do believe it's more important than ever to be intentional about investing in and seeking out the right relationships that we need to thrive both personally and professionally. I think high performing executives need to value the perspectives of other leaders, as well as the wisdom that comes from practical experiences learned by others in similar circumstances. And I would say the women of LeadHERship Global give generously in terms of their experience, their expertise, their guidance. And I would say that they feel as though LeadHERship Global is a safe environment where they can share their concerns. I will tell you that most C suite executives often feel that any public show of vulnerability or uncertainty actually introduces risk. It risks losing the confidence or respect of their board of directors, their employees, their customers. But being in a community of other leaders allows you to have an outlet to continuously learn and improve in a confidential setting and get exposure to new ways of approaching problems and issues, as well as new ways of leveraging opportunities. And I have found in LeadHERship Global that this kind of safe, supportive environment allows members to develop friendships, to develop networks with other CEOs that can enrich their professional and their personal life. And that has unbelievable return on investment. But it's so important to choose a leadership community that supports your unique purpose, that can help you improve the growth and profitability of your organization, because you get to benefit from the hard-won lessons and experiences of other leaders, which means you need to find a community that is going to be relationship-based, purpose-driven, that has a culture of being transparent and honest and open. And in those kinds of environments, members have access to best practices on key issues. They can receive honest advice and objective feedback from peers who have no conflict of interest. And they can collaborate with leaders to actually work on their business rather than just in their business. So they get to work on the business rather than just in the business on a day-to-day multitude of tasks. And I feel like being able to push yourself up from the mire of the day-to-day work life, look around and say, am I still headed towards my North Star? Are the strategies I put in place 6 months ago still working for me? What do I need to change? What do I need to pivot? And then getting feedback and input from other extraordinary leaders is absolutely priceless.
So, what can people like me do? Can I provide a platform? Can I be a mentor? Can I give support? All of the above, none of the above, or something different?
Yes, no, that would be amazing, Tom. So we welcome men to be allies, supporters, to provide platforms to help women raise their visibility, expand their thought leadership, and really be able to share their knowledge and expertise through media platforms, through speaking opportunities. And listen, we know that social networks are critical to professional advancement. We know that men and women now need very different kinds of networks to succeed, because women in leadership, especially executive leadership or entrepreneurial leadership, often face cultural and political hurdles that men typically do not. So they benefit from an inner circle of close female contacts that can share private, confidential information, but they need a broader circle of both men and women to lift them up, to be able to give them advice and guidance, to be able to cheer them on. And I often say that in everyone's network, you need to have a super connector, a champion, a re energizer, a mentor, a sponsor. You need to have an accountability partner, and you need to ensure that you are surrounding yourself with diverse perspectives and a community where you have a sense of belonging and a safe space to be yourself. And absolutely anyone can support LeadHERship Global or the women of LeadHERship Global, or really just your neighbors, your friends, your aunts, your daughters, your cousins, who are beginning to step into their own leadership journey. And as I said, women do face greater challenges in networking and finding professional opportunities and career advancement. And they, more than men, need to maintain both a wide network and an informative inner circle in order to land the best positions and secure the most advantages when it comes to either an entrepreneurial journey or a leadership role. So I would say that we need all the help we can receive, Tom. Thank you for that offer.
Linda, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask a couple of things. One, what would be the best way to connect with you or find out more about your LeadHERship? And could you talk to us about the books you've written? We're actually going to save that for another podcast because I didn't even get to that part. But I definitely want to visit with you on that. But so tell us a little bit about your books, the most recent one, and then what's the best way to find out more about you and perhaps connect with you and what you have going on?
Thank you, Tom. So my most recent book was actually an anthology that represented more than 30 leaders from LeadHERship Global. And in that book, you will find stories of transition, triumph over tragedy. You will find incredibly inspiring stories of transformation. And I feel that every single woman who is profiled in that book is done an incredible job of really being very open, very honest, very transparent about those pivotal moments in their life that set a course to an entirely new trajectory, an entirely new, it could be an entirely new lifestyle, an entirely new venture, an entirely new business pursuit. But in every single case, I think that the women that are profiled in the book, LeadHERship Unveiled, my most recent, they are all incredible representatives of LeadHERship Global. They're all focused on cultivating authentic relationships, acting with courage, demonstrating passion and commitment, being a lifetime learner, really maintaining that sense of curious inquiry. And I would say that this group of authors really celebrated each other. They came together to share, to learn, to grow, and to connect in this trusting community of being co-authors of the book, LeadHERship Unveiled. They lifted each other up, they encouraged each other, they celebrated each other, and it was just an incredible experience. And I feel very blessed to have been able to bring that book to life and showcase some of our most, I think, inspiring and motivating members of LeadHERship Global.
How about connecting with you?
I would love to hear from anyone. You are welcome to reach out to me at my email address, linda@leadhershipglobal.com. So it's LeadHERship Global with an H. So linda@leadhershipglobal.com. Drop me a note. I'd love to connect. And you can always follow LeadHERship Global on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So check us out, see what we're up to, and you're welcome to connect with me on either of those platforms as well.
Linda, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me. I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.